But let's actually talk about something else really important. Let's talk about last week's video, shall we? The stuff that I talked about in the last week's video. If you guys haven't seen it, then don't bother, because I'm gonna give you a quick rundown of everything in it. I just need to find my notes again, because apparently I closed the tab where I had my notes in. But essentially, we released a video where we talk about update 7. And update 7 is coming this year, which I think came to a surprise for a lot of people. I don't think anyone expected us to release it so soon. And to some extent, neither did we. Yeah, let's start with that. Yeah, update 7. Update 7 is coming sometime in November. The reason why we want to release it this year, so it's coming in November on experimental, and then sometime before the end of the year, we're going to roll it over to early access. And one of the main reasons why we're doing it this year is because scheduling wise, we kind of need to do it. So this time around, usually the way we do it is like, we have an update of things we want to do, and like that we define like this is the content we need for it. And if we don't finish the content in time for like whatever we scheduled to do it, then we'll just be like, all right, let's delay it and release it later. Or, you know, did what we do with update 6, maybe where we release it in some form and then we'll keep working on it for a long time and blah, blah, blah. This time around, we felt like we need to get some parts of this update out as soon as possible. So, and like the only good time slot for that, if we're not waiting until like later next year, would be to release it this year, essentially. So we're doing the opposite route here, where we're instead of saying, okay, we're going to release an update this year, what can we do in the time frame up until then, essentially? And then we'll just release what we can. And it's a really short time frame, so like there's not too much, you know, coming in this update, because like I said, it's a really short time frame. So that's on the when and sort of why when kind of question. Next question is what is in update 7, I guess. Yeah, one of the cool things that's coming up to 7 is game modes. We've talked a long time that we're gonna do game modes, and we're gonna start it off by making this like an initial release of game modes. And for the most part, the only game mode that's really coming in update 7 is shut up. When I was recording that video, I was laughing about that too a lot. I could not unhear it. Anyways, game modes. The one game mode that's coming in update 7 is passive mode, or like peaceful mode, or whatever I'm gonna call it. So because that's like, we have 2 game modes that are highly requested by community. One of them is creative mode, and one of them is peaceful mode. Those are easily the top 2 ones that we've seen. And creative mode, we don't want to add just yet, because it will sort of muddy the feedback that we're getting if people can just like place and build whatever we want. It kind of muddies like the feedback that we get from community when it comes to balancing to the game, essentially. So it's hard to know like which part of our community are doing what. And the thing is, like, if you want creative mode, it's sort of doable already. You know, there's ways to sort of use mods to enable that and stuff like that. So like if people really miss it, you know, it's somewhat doable to do already. So yeah, that's another reason why like we didn't feel like we have to get creative mode in before 1.0. So that's that. There's a bunch of other game modes that are on our radar, and there's a bunch of game modes that sort of like, I mean, the more we can do, the better, I think. I think we are interested in doing a bunch of them. So we'll just have to see, sort of wait and see what we manage to do before 1.0 and what comes for 1.0 and stuff like that. I mentioned in the video that like we're introducing peaceful mode. In the future, we might add more on top of that, you know? So like, you know, I don't know what we'll do exactly, but it could be things like where we add, you know, difficulty slider maybe, or like setting of how animals behave, or maybe you want them to like not attack you if you don't attack them, they won't attack you, but if you start attacking creatures, then they'll defend themselves. Maybe that's also, you know, a different setting for that. So we'll sort of see what happens in the future. regarding that. And yeah, I think the most hype thing that people saw was the conveyor belt ceiling mount. We're adding ceiling mounts. They're pretty sick, and they do the thing with like the I should have made a video showing this, but the guidelines that you have, like they will work with the ceiling mounts as well, so you can like line them up with stuff. I've seen some people ask about like splitters and mergers on the ceiling mounts. So like, will they be is there an easy way to line them up as well? It's a good piece of feedback. At the moment, they don't work that way, but it's not impossible that we'll, find some time while we're in experimental or maybe before then to sort of get that snapping working. So we'll have to like use that sort of time when we're in experimental to like maybe catch that feedback and see if we can look into it essentially. So, but at the moment they don't function that way, but maybe in the future. What else is in the video? There's the coupon stuff. If you didn't know, we've added a new track for coupons. So you can now also sync the organic data capsules, which by the way, they will change names. So it's kind of confusing. In the video, they say like DNA capsule. That's the new name. Apparently, I don't know why we changed names, but apparently we are. So organic data capsules will now be called DNA mod capsules or something. DNA cap, whatever. But yeah, they run on separate tracks now. So like when you're syncing items, they go on one track and like regardless of which item it is. And when you sync the organic data capsules, they will go on a separate track. And that's so that like you'll get an incentive for, dealing with the local fauna. Because if you already have had synced a bunch of stuff in the sync, then adding anything on top of that wouldn't really make much of a difference. But having it this way, when there's two separate tracks, it means that they're more valuable early game, and they're also valuable regardless of how much you've been syncing in the awesome shop, in the awesome sync. So even if you've already used the awesome sync in your late game, you can still sort of sync the data tables, the data capsules, and you'll still get a bunch of tickets from that. So looking for that. It's kind of sweet actually. It might be tweaked a little bit in terms of like how much you get, because right now it's like you get 1,000 for every capsule that you sync in the sync. That value might go up and down a little bit in between now and when we actually release the update. Where's the DNA milking meta? Hopefully never, but you never know. So that's that, and let's see here. Overclocking. Good times. All right, next point. Next question. Overclocking. The one thing, so overclocking, we've had this discussion before. Overclocking will change in update 7. I can tell you that much. I'm not sure exactly what the change will be, because we're sort of going back and forth a little bit on that as we're testing. But one thing that we do know we're changing with overclocking is that for power generators right now, the fuel rate or whatever, the burn rate for fuel is linear, but the output isn't, and we're gonna change it so the output matches the burn rate essentially, which will make them linear, fully linear. The thing on that, as some people have asked me about it, and there's obviously like kind of two groups of people. Like either you want to change overclocking in the game or you don't want to change overclocking. For power generators specifically, the only real trade-off that's in the game at the moment is that you have to build more of them to get more power out of them if you overclock. And we don't think that's an interesting trade-off for power generators. So that's why we're going with this approach. And there's, even if that's the only reason, like there is still a trade-off of you still have to collect the slugs and stuff like that. So, I mean, there still is a trade-off, but it's not as like the trade-off that exists right now is just that it's time consuming, kind of like a little bit of resources, but This is a game where it's an infinite builder essentially, where you get like an infinite amount of resources. So like the only real resource is really space and like time and like, you know, that kind of stuff. So we felt that it makes sense to change that. So yes. And I think that was it, right? Did I talk about anything else? I mentioned that creatures probably won't be happening in update 7. They'll probably come later. There's apparently some dependency on the world branch. World branch also don't know when that's happening, so enjoy Paradise Island for as long as you can. Because, yeah, we don't know at the moment when we'll introduce any changes to the world map. So do what you want with that information. Will it just turn into a large waterfall? So, okay, I can do a repetition of that because we sort of talked about it there at the start of the stream. We are gonna probably do something about Paradise Island, but not exactly sure what it is. So the decision internally really when it comes to Paradise Island is that we're not gonna spend any time on it essentially, which means that when we're looking at that island, it's sort of not finished. And there's a couple of options we have. You know, either we just don't do anything with it, or either we nuke it completely or remove it, or, you know, we, I don't know, like what are the options we have, but we haven't really like decided that we're gonna remove it. We just decided that it's canceled in terms of like, we're not doing much with it. And maybe that means that we'll remove it completely from the game. Maybe that just means that we make it so that you can't go there at all. I don't know. But the waterfalls, I think, will stay around. So, like, if you built any water extractors there, you'll find, etc., etc. We can move the kill box, but it's kind of weird because we have to set a border at some point eventually anyways. So, if it means that people start building there for no apparent reason, and, you know, that area doesn't feel like it's living up to the expectation of what we feel like that area should look like, you know, then it's probably easy for us to just remove it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Y'all have definitely voiced your opinion on it. That's for sure. But you know, with change comes sacrifices sometimes. Delete the rest of the map and then keep Paradise Island. Fair enough. All right, well, let's do that. You have there are no nodes on that island, but I'm sure you'll figure that out. It's good for nuclear waste. I'm sure there are other options as well. Because, like, we're also going to do at some point, okay, there's two things that aren't mentioned, by the way, in that, in the map that we put out. One thing is that caves is completely, like, independent from the world map. So, like, caves have their own, like, separate track. So, even if it says that, like, even if it says in an area that, like, this area is almost finished, if there are caves in that area, they might not be finished. So they run a separate track essentially. Another thing that also runs a separate track is like the world border. So there's a couple of places around the map where there's like a pretty, you know, there's a definite, like you can see the border where like it's a square thing poking out, or like if water doesn't match, you know, the color of what they have in the biome and stuff like that. That's also a separate thing. So, you know, that's gonna happen as well in parallel. It might be the last thing we do. I'm not quite sure there. But it's not part of like the general map building biome, you know, kind of deal. So caves and borders around the map, you know, they live by their own rules, and that affects the Paradise Island because Paradise Island is on the border of the map. So when we're doing those border changes, that's sort of when we'll know what to do with Paradise Island essentially. Cool. I think I brought everything up here. We're gonna do FICSMAS again this year. It's gonna come back. It's gonna be a rerun of last year. It's not gonna be any new stuff. Last year we barely had any new things either, but this year for sure we won't have any new things because update 7 is gonna take up so much of our time, and yeah. Cool. Let's see here. That's it.